today's session of Visual JForex, we will be taking a look at the indicator named Fibonacci Pivot Point. This is an indicator which can be utilized to figure out the trend as well as the support and resistance levels for the underlying instrument. So we will be seeing how we can utilize this indicator to develop and design the automated algorithms on the Visual JForex platform, which we can then use to figure out the optimum entry and exit point. So this is the indicator block. We will see its utility on the Visual JForex board developed by the Dukascopy Bank SA. Here it is, Fibonacci Pivot Point. It is included under the other trend classification. Here it is. It's fairly easy to find. We will use on candle as our start point for the day. As I have said many a times, any of the three can be utilized as our start point. Now coming to the formula, here I have also included the formula. It is fairly simple. To figure out the pivot point, we simply take the highest value for the prior candle and then we add the lowest value of the same candle and then we add the closing value and divide this sum by 3. So that's how we get the pivot point. And then to figure out the support and the resistance levels, we use the Fibonacci ratio, and that's why this pivot point is called as the Fibonacci pivot point. And as per this calculation, then we get the first support, second support, third support, and in case of resistance we have 3 resistance levels: resistance 1, resistance 2, and resistance 3. Now coming to the customization of the Fibonacci pivot point, we have to define these 4 parameters depending on which we will have these output values, the central point, and 3 resistance and 3 support zones. So we will have 7 output values in all, and these 4 custom parameters are of high importance. We have to see what is the likelihood of each parameter bringing in the most optimum entry and exit points, and also we should be getting the fair amount of idea on which side of the trend we are trading on. So we will use this indicator. I will briefly explain to you how this indicator works. So here is the JForex platform. We will do the quick search for the Fibonacci pivot point. Here it is. Okay, so this is the Fibonacci pivot point. This is being plotted for the daily time frame, and daily time frame we have the central pivot point around 1.181, whereas all these 3 resistance levels are on the upper side, heading all the way till 1.187, and on the lower side we have these support zones, and the last of this support, the support 3, is at 1.1748. So this is the indicators plotting on the Euro USD chart for the hourly time frame. Now looking at its use, we mostly use this indicator, as I said, to find the trend. So whenever the underlying price action is happening above this central pivot point, it is generally considered as the bullish, and when the price action is below this central pivot point, it is considered as bearish, and then all these 3 support levels come into play. Usually we use these time frames and these resistance and support levels to figure out the entries, and my personal belief is that these supports, the first support and the second support, are not really considered much strong on the daily time frame, and generally we use this central pivot point and then the third support and the third resistance level. Mostly the turnaround is expected around this level, but if the turnaround doesn't really happen and if we get the fresh break beyond these key levels, then That means the underlying momentum is fairly strong, and it's better to either sit on the sidelines or play with the trend rather than trying to go and hope for the inversion or reversion of the momentum. We can customize this indicator. We can change the time horizon. Now this is being plotted for the intraday. I will also use the historical level, so it will be much easier to gain insight in how this indicator works. You can also go down and lower the time frame, but that doesn't really make much sense. Even for the intraday trading, the traders generally use the daily time frame, and then who would like to trade on the swing trades for the larger term time horizon, then even this weekly and monthly time horizon is considered good enough. So we will first see weekly. Now I have plotted, but it's taking time. Let's see. Okay. So this is the Fibonacci pivot point now being plotted on the weekly time frame. As you can see here, it struggled closer to the first resistance of this week's resistance zone, and then after coming down, and it is now consolidating closer to the central pivot point, which is the key area, and whenever the price is above it, it generally acts as the support zone. So from this example, it is fairly clear that these are key levels, and as I said, we use these as the marker of the trend of the underlying instrument, and we will be looking for the buy trades as long as the price action is holding well above it. And if the price action drops below this key level, then after due consolidation we can even think about going for the short sell trade, which then gives us the target closer to this first support, which is down all the way around 1.167, so around 100 to 110 pips difference is there between the central pivot point and first support. Now let us head back to the Visual JForex board. So coming to this customization of the four parameters, we have to first choose the instrument of our choice. If you want to work with the Euro USD, well and good, you don't have to change anything. If you want to work with any other underlying instrument, then you will have to see if that particular instrument is supported on this platform, and if it is listed here, that means it is generally supported on this platform, so you can use that instrument of your choice. Now I will keep the Euro USD as it is. Coming to the candlesticks period, here the period of this fourth parameter is going to be more important, and generally we don't pay much attention. In case of other indicators, the single candles time frame and then the overall time frame are both important, but in this case, these candlesticks period, so whether the candlestick is being plotted on the 10 minutes or half an hourly or hourly or for that matter daily, doesn't really make much difference, because we see that these time period which we will be using for calculation of the pivot point is of much higher importance, and as per this time period the calculation will be done for this figuring out of the key levels for Fibonacci pivot point. So we leave this parameter as it is. Coming to the shift is the look back period. Whether you want to take into account the current value or if you want to go back in time and retrieve the prior data, then shift helps in that purpose. And in in case in this case of shift, then the candle period's time period becomes important, because if you want to go back in time by say 3 hours, then you have to use the 3 hours time frame to go back, and you have to calculate accordingly if this period of each candle is of 10 minutes, then you will have to take 18 as the shift. If it is hourly, then you will have to take 3 as the shift. Sorry. So this is important in that scenario, and we will have to keep in mind what is the candlestick period when determining the appropriate shift value for this indicator to retrieve the data to do the comparison. And then comes the question of the period of the Fibonacci pivot point. As I said, mostly for intraday perspective, the daily time frame is good enough, but for swing trades, we need the larger time frame, and that's why the time frames like weekly or monthly are generally preferred over the shorter time frames. And then utilizing these key levels which are generated after these customized parameters, we will be having this central pivot point and the three support and resistance zone, and then we can use these indicators output values to design and develop and set the conditions depending on which the trading will happen. Only when certain conditions are met as we have defined them, only then particular trade will be open. So this is of crucial importance here. Coming to its settings, the offer side, we will see that there is always a minor difference because of the spread between the bid side and the ask side. And coming to the applied price doesn't really make much difference as we have the predetermined formula for calculation of the Fibonacci pivot point, and as a result of that, the applied price doesn't really cast much of an impact on how the plotting will happen for the Fibonacci pivot point. And then you can take these output values, any output values as you want to set conditions, and use them for defining the conditions or simply to do further calculations. So there are multiple ways in which these output values can be utilized. So one of the way is to compare whether the particular candle has closed above or below any key level. Suppose if we are using the central pivot point, then we can simply compare the last candle's closing level and see whether it has closed above the central pivot point or below the central pivot point. So we will have to define this variable, and we will have these two options given at the bottom, and we will be able to do the comparison fairly easily. So that's it from my side for today's session, and I hope you have been able to understand the use of these indicator block to design and develop the algorithms on the Visual JForex board. I would like to thank you all for joining in, and I would also like to remind to the subscription of the Dukascopy webinar channel. Stay tuned for the further developments in the market. Goodbye.